we're going to transition to panel 1, which is Leadership and Society, the Changing Landscapes of Business, Education, and Innovation. Moderating is Konstantinos Kalaitzidis, intern at the Consulate General of Greece in New York and curator of TEDxLarissa. We ask attendees to please post questions in the available chat, and our panelists will respond during the Q&A session following their prepared discussion. Gentlemen, I offer you the floor.
Hi, Chris, and hello, everyone. Welcome to today's annual Spring Philo for Thought Symposium. Chris, again, thank you for including me in this event. It was amazing. The experience last year was amazing. Really happy to be moderating the first panel of today. And also really happy to see Mr. Koutras, who is the Consul General of Greece in New York. Hello there. So allow me to introduce myself. I'm Konstantinos Kalaitzidis, a computer science student at the University of Thessaly in Greece. And as Chris said, currently I fulfilled my internship at the Consul General of Greece in New York, and looking forward to starting my graduate studies at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden on health informatics. So today I'll be moderating the first panel, Leadership, Data, and Society. Some of the topics that we will discuss include civic leadership, changing landscape of business, tech, and education, technological advancements, and related predictions about post-pandemic educational trends and economy. Today, our panelists are Dr. Thimios Zaharopoulos, Provost of American College of Greece, Deree, Nicolaou, founding CEO of GreekTech, and Demetri Papacostas, Head of Corporate and Commodity Specialist at Bloomberg, LP, author, Foreign Exchange Options and Risk Management. Hello, panelists, and welcome to today's symposium. Now, we will start I will be addressing the questions to you all, to each one of you. We will go in a circular manner. I will start with Nicolaou first, and each panelist will have about 2 minutes max to respond to the questions. And hopefully at the end, we'll have about 5 minutes of a Q&A session. In total, this panel will last for 30 minutes. So, hello, Maria. I will start with the first question with you. So, many great startups and ideas are born in times of adversity. What observations can you make for this past year in terms of innovation within the startup sector in New York and Greece and Cyprus? Are there less entrepreneurial initiatives? Are people less risk averse in investing their capital on their ideas and prefer to play it safe? This is the first question.
Mario, you're muted.
Costa, can you please unmute Mario?
He's not muted.
Okay, I think Mario, can you speak right now? Oh, we can't hear you. Okay, Chris, I think, should I proceed to a next speaker until Mario tries to fix his problem?
Yes, I'm going to close my video a moment and see with Mario what's going on, but please proceed to the.
Perfect. All right, okay. So, I will now go to Dr. Thimios Zaharopoulos. Hello, Mr. Zaharopoulos. Great to have you here in this panel. The first question is, during the pandemic, we've seen a widespread increase in hybrid learning. How do you see the future of education evolving in the near future? Has the education landscape changed for good?
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. I was impressed by Dr. Koutras's introductions, remarks, and they were right on the mark as far as I'm concerned. Now to the question, there are different types of educational institutions around the world. Some of them were far ahead in terms of online and hybrid learning. I don't think those are going to be affected by the COVID crisis very much because they were already ahead. However, there are a lot of other institutions that were forced to quickly catch up in this crisis. And based on that experience, they will decide what to keep from this virtual environment and what not to. I think those institutions that were far behind in terms of, or just behind in terms of virtual learning will be affected significantly. The others will not. At the American College of Greece, we were somewhat prepared because we had to switch to online learning within 2 days in March of 2020. We were prepared because I had put in a system of training instructors for the past 2 or 3 years. So at the moment we were forced to switch, I had 84 instructors trained on online teaching, which brings me to the foundation of this issue. Training, training, training. Online teaching and learning is not appropriate for everyone, but those who do teach online or hybrid have to be constantly trained, not on the technologies, but on pedagogy. It is a different way of learning. That's why, as I said, it's different for different learners. By the way, research indicates that hybrid or blended learning is the most effective modality, even better than face-to-face instruction. And we eventually have to use some kind of hybrid methodology, even for primarily in-person teaching, to supplement in-person teaching to be the most effective.
Okay, Mr. Zaharopoulos, thank you for your response. As a student myself, I also have found that hybrid learning might be the optimal way for education from the student perspective. Now, I would now go to Mr. Papacostas. Hello and welcome to today's panel. So, Mr. Papacostas, the first question is, in a nutshell, what is the importance of ESG investing and where do you think it is headed?
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. Congratulations on a beautiful effort. Wonderful to see a lot of faces, familiar faces on here. So I'm going to spend a bit more time on this one, if you'll forgive me, and I'll try to speak less on other ones. The reason I will do that is because Dr. Koutras's presentation and Dr. Zaharopoulos as well referred to jobs, and ESG is something that every young person should think about, obviously as a concept, but also where are the opportunities in this context for work, for development. So ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance issues, right? And if I distill it down, it becomes a form of measurement of ESG principles, scales, benchmarks. My company, Bloomberg, for example, has now come up with all kinds of standards that, but there's also independent boards that try to create, for example, standards for what's called ESG financing or green financing. And there's many companies, Sustainalytics, but that's how people are trying to distill this concept. Specifically to your question, Costa, in terms of investing, I would break that down into three things. There's exclusionary screening. So for example, you say, I will not invest, I will not buy stocks in companies that are tobacco oriented or that promote alcohol or gambling or coal industry. So that's an exclusionary filter that you might put on there. The second would be ESG integration and sort of positive screening, right? Including factors. Companies that have or are working to lower their carbon footprint or have a lower carbon footprint. They reduce waste. They have a policy in place to reduce waste. They're fighting for gender equality. They're fighting for decent compensation, for a living wage. And the third way of thinking about how do I invest in ESG is thematic, right? I will invest in renewable energy. I will invest in gender diversity, water scarcity. I mean, water scarcity will become a huge component for us as we go forward. So that's how I would look at ESG investing specifically. But again, I would encourage everybody that is looking for career changes or development to think more broadly, because I just touched the tip of the iceberg on this. It is a huge field that I think, and a very interesting field. And to be perfectly honest with you, a necessary field if we're going to preserve the human race for the next 100 years.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Papacostas, for your brief explanation on ESG's investing. And I think it's worth picking on later on if we have the opportunity, just elaborating on more about ESG investing. Now, let's go back to Mario Nicolaou. Gεια σου, Maria. Hello.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Crystal clear, perfectly.
Perfect.
All right. So,
sorry, well, firstly, sorry for that. I really apologize for the technical issue.
Absolutely.
I guess super common in the COVID world. Thanks a lot for organizing this event. Yeah, so I guess my question was, are we seeing more startups blossom? Many people, many entrepreneurs coming out through COVID, and listening to Mr. Goudras at the beginning, he did point out that the difference between 2008, which was financial crisis, and 2020, which is a health crisis, and that's back in 2008 we saw many great startups such as Uber, WeWorks, and many others, WhatsApp, come out. This is a little different. There's more capital deployed into startups. We've seen a rise in New York. We've gone from 3 billion in investment in startups to 6 billion. But I don't know if that there are many necessity entrepreneurs during this crisis. Many of our people in our community at GreekTech that work for the big tech companies, the Spotifys and Googles, in the last few months, I've been reached out by a few of them. They want to start their own journeys. They want to launch their own startups. So I do see a bit of an increase there. As for Greece and Cyprus, looking at the pre-seed investments, it's stable when comparing to 2019. We see the same amount of investments, which is around 30 a year. So yeah, that's pretty much my answer. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for your input on the topic. I think we have a positive tone concerning startups, even though in such an environment that we find ourselves today. I will now proceed to Mr. Thimios Zaharopoulos for the second question. Lately, we've seen the rise in recognition and endorsement of online certificates, especially by big corporations. An example is Google's certificate programs, where you can pay a couple of $100 for the company's 6-month online course, and after completion, compete for a position at the company that a 4-year college graduate would do as well. Is this a fair equalizer to the large gap already generated by the elite universities?
I will back up a bit and tell you that in my experience, both in the United States, where I was an educator for 27 years, and in Greece, the last 8, I think that college graduates are facing a similar situation. And I'll simplify it. When we ask as educators, CEOs and other high-end managers of companies, what kind of people are they looking for? They tell us they're looking for critical thinkers, people who are flexible, people who can work together with others, and so forth, and not to focus so much on basic skills to enter their companies, because those skills can be taught. At the same time, however, hiring managers are looking for those basic skills because they don't want to teach them. Okay, so this is the problem that college graduates are facing. So in my mind, the answer to your question and the solution is both. I think that as Dr. Kutra said, the world is changing so fast. We can't educate people for a job that we don't even know exists right now. We have to educate them for that situation, meaning communication skills, critical thinking, ability to work with others, emotional intelligence, and so forth and so on. That requires a good education. That requires a good education no matter where you go, because it is my belief that the right university is the one that's right for the individual. You can get as much from a smaller institution that's not as well known as an elite institution. It depends what you put in. So a good education is very important, because that will give graduates the ability to move up in the company. The question then is, how do they get the first job? Well, credentializing will help them get that first job. Any kind of credentializing, skills, computer skills, or any of those kinds of skills that the badges and the certificates provide at various institutions. I think this is going to be never ending. I think young people will have to accept the idea that they will have to continue to learn, and more importantly, they have to be educated on how to learn on an ongoing basis. So that's as simple as I can make it. It sounds too simplistic, but I really believe that's the way to success in the long term.
Okay, Mr. Zaharopoulos, thank you so much for your input. I really liked what you said, that the right university is the right university for the individual. That's a very important takeaway. Mr. Papacostas, back to you. The question is, has the rise of remote work increased the need for robust IT security solutions for companies and organizations? Are data breaches due to the nature of the home work environment a plausible and potential threat for an organization?
The answer is yes, but this is not a new thing, right? This is not a COVID-related priority that has risen, particularly because of COVID. Only because there's no major organization that all of a sudden said, "Oh my God, we're vulnerable. We better protect ourselves." If you haven't been doing that, you're in trouble already. You've probably been paying ransom to some Russian kid in his mother's basement. So I will say one thing though about technology, and I'll give an example. One area of responsibility in my group is corporations, and specifically Treasury. So the corporations in general, Treasury areas in particular, are incredibly slow moving in terms of adopting technology. So they would literally have, Susie who takes, the numbers from a screen and puts them in this other screen, and uses an Excel spreadsheet to basically keep records that are critical to the company. What COVID did, the remote working did, is to basically force all of these type of activities to be automated. There was some momentum in that direction before COVID. It has accelerated significantly. So what that means is any process that was kind of semi-automatic, they were using Excel-based, now became an imperative to make it robust, right? So it's not so much about hacking. It's much more about, how do I make this process robust? So if Susie isn't there, or Susie I can't rely on her network at home, this gets done. And what that has forced, the good thing is obviously from a corporate perspective, you get to fire Susie, which isn't so nice, but on the other side, you get to fire Susie, which is not nice at all for Susie. And, typically a person that did that job is not, has a certain level of skill set that is going to be very difficult to find a job again. So that's where I saw technology sort of hit, sort of manifest itself, frankly, during the COVID period.
All right, perfect. Okay, Mario Nicolaou, has the pandemic brought an increase in innovation in rural areas? Opportunity is sometimes a function of density, meaning that cities are usually the hotspot of innovation and networking. Lately, we've seen cities like Austin, Texas, and Miami, Florida absorb many tech giants from Silicon Valley and New York. Is the future of entrepreneurship shifting away from the big metropolitan areas? And if so, why?
Yeah, I do see the rise of new cities due to COVID. However, cities like New York still remain the hub, right? The city with the most Fortune 500 companies. Startups want to be close to their clients, their customers. So I sense that this is more of a temporary thing, in my opinion. Yeah, so that's kind of my short answer.
Okay, so this is the thing that we're observing now is something temporary. A follow-up question. Do you think after the COVID-19 pandemic subsides that we will go back to where we're used to in 2019, for example?
Yeah, so you already see companies like Google announce that, people should start returning to their offices from September onwards. I feel once Google announces that, they kind of set the tone for the other big tech companies too. Now, they will go back to, let's say, a 60, 70%, return, and then there will be more remote work will be more common. But in the long run, yes, there will be new ecosystems, but I just don't see, New York or Silicon Valley getting, I guess, shrinking a lot anytime soon, due to the many years, the decades of being like hubs. That's.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Zaharopoulos, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought an increase in radical digital surveillance technologies. We've seen that in China, for example, and that has also happened by many other governments and dictatorships even across the world as a means to tackle and monitor the pandemic. This raises eyebrows to whether such practices are appropriate and ethical. Today, the rise of artificial intelligence and its merge with biotechnology expect to raise even more questions on how we decide what's ethically sound or not. Do you expect to see a flourishing of philosophical majors in the future as a means to limit technology and potential missteps of its exploitation by governments and corporations?
Not necessarily. I think that all disciplines taught at institutions of higher learning will have to incorporate some kind of ethical training if they don't already. Obviously, we're going to be chasing technology. It reminds me of this joke about the guy who was offered a latest technology, and he says, "I will buy your latest technology if you promise me it's your last new technology." We're always going to be chasing this, and it is dangerous, as the question implies. I think it is dangerous, and therefore it will be exploited by certain regimes, individuals, companies. Now, in Europe, as many of you know, the privacy rules are very strict with GDPR, and to the point where sometimes it ties our hands on doing things that we took for granted in the past, like sending an email to somebody. So Europe has more filters and privacy safety nets than the United States, even though the US talks about privacy more so than others. So I think we'll be chasing technology, but we can't stop it. And Therefore, what I think is necessary is a form of privacy literacy programs that start even from elementary school. Because a lot of people talk about their concern for privacy, but they give it away constantly, very easily, by taking part in online games or online, drawings or whatever. So on one hand, you think you're so concerned about privacy that you don't want to tell anybody anything, but then you give it away without even thinking about it twice, because there's a chance you may win a pizza. So this is constant. It has to be taught. We have to be very aware that how easy it is to give our personal information to people out there. Absolutely.
Yeah, a pretty radical input when you said privacy literacy programs should begin from elementary school. I personally totally agree with that. And I would also add that privacy literacy should also be a motivation for the leaders of our governments, of the European Union, of the US, for example, to monitor better the big corporations, or even themselves, the government themselves. Now, I will go back to Mr. Papacostas for a question that can also be addressed by Mr. Zaharopoulos. Many students had their internships canceled or frozen by many organizations due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In today's volatile job market, what would you tell students and recent graduates who are ready to start their careers to expect? So, Mr. Papacostas, you may address this question, and also Mr. Zaharopoulos after can add his comment.
Yeah. Let me just very briefly comment on Mr. Zaharopoulos' privacy comments. It is most of these topics we can do a whole session, frankly, but this one in particular is such a poignant one, because is the genie out of the bag, right? I love Google Docs, I love Google Sheets, I love all this Google. Oh, and it's free. Well, it's not free. Google takes the fact that they know who I am, where I live, what I like, what I've seen, what's on YouTube. They know everything about me, and they sell that. And am I getting my money's worth? But that trade-off is not obvious. It is not transparent. And I don't know how we put that genie back in the bag. We really started this the completely wrong way 20 years ago. And anyway, very interesting topic. In terms of the internships, I got to tell you, I guess I'm not a young person looking for a job, but I'm optimistic. Yes, internships were unturned. Some people were canceled, others were remote. It just wasn't the same experience. But the longer term trend, certainly, and I'm speaking more specifically about New York, maybe even the Wall Street area, if I'm honest, I guess. You all, young people on this call, are privileged. You know the system. You have technological skills that are beyond, probably 90% of the world's youth. So understand that you're privileged and be able to use that in a constructive way. The other thing that's happening is there's a juniorization across the board, certainly on Wall Street, certainly in the bank, certainly my area, in everywhere. In other words, what that means is, a Citibank or a JP Morgan would much rather fire me, and I'm going to make less mistakes. I might do things better. I might do things smarter. They're like, okay, so we make some mistakes, but I'm paying this person 1/10 of what I'm paying Demetri. So who cares? And we've seen some effects of that, like in, Citibank sent out, $1 billion, whatever they did, to the wrong person, and probably wouldn't have happened if they had an experienced person there. They're like, okay, so is it worth it? Sure it is, because there's, we're juniorizing all of these jobs. So what that means for you, though, as young people is, hey, I can get in there and they'll be more tolerant of me, and they're much happier to have me than an older person. So I wouldn't make too much of the fact that you didn't get your internship. I would get back in there and try it this year or work. I would even, it's unfortunate that I have to say this, but certainly in the US, I would offer to work for free, although they won't anyway, that probably won't happen, just to get inside a particular organization if that's your interest.
Mr. Zaharopoulos, your input?
Yeah, well, I'm a strong believer in internships. When I was a department chair of a university in Kansas long ago, I mandated internships for all our students. I've experienced the two extremes of in terms of legal elements of internships. In Greece, internships are highly regulated, whereas in the US, it's the other extreme, where there are cases in the US where students must pay to intern, which I find abhorrent, and that has to be regulated. In Greece, it's the other extreme, where until recently, students of places like the American College of Greece, a private institution, were discriminated against and could not intern, whereas public university students could. So we need to find the middle ground somewhere, but I highly value internships. Now, those students who, because of COVID, did not have a chance to intern, I would go back to credentializing. You can make it up by building a portfolio of credentials and examples of your work, and show it to prospective employers. That's how you make up for it. You know, everybody requires experience, but how do you start? That's a tough question. And you start by taking even a job that's not directly related shows to people that somebody considered you valuable enough and dependable enough to pay you. Sorry for the video here, but you're beginning to see the sunshine of Greece late afternoon.
Can't wait.
That's perfect. That's very good. I can't wait to see it tomorrow myself as well, where I'll be back in Greece finally after 6 months. So, Marios Nicolaou, your last question for today. The movement of the digital nomad is not new, but the pandemic most definitely has accelerated its widespread adoption among many entrepreneurs, freelancers, and creators. We have also seen the Greek government issuing many motivations for digital nomads coming back to Greece. So generally speaking, how do you see this movement growing in the future?
Yeah, Konstantinos. So yeah, it seems to me digital nomads and remote working has been tied together these days as one. From a previous response to a previous question, which is, do I see kind of people go back to the big cities? And it's a yes, I see people going back to the offices. And for that, I see the digital nomad movement declining a little. Why? Because people will have to go back to their offices. It's a temporary thing, in my opinion, due to this health crisis. Digital nomads as a community, I believe, would shrink for a few years. And as big tech will be more open to having remote workers, I guess it would continue to grow down the line. But I feel 2021 and 2022 digital nomads will kind of, people have to start going back to the office. That's kind of what, based on my previous response, that's how I see things going. Yeah, like, because I look at my direct circle and I see all my friends that work at Spotify, Google, and so on. They've been in Greece, they've been in Miami, but they're already looking at apartments to come back to the city. So that's how I come to this conclusion. So yeah, hope this answered your question.
It more than does, and from my perspective, I've seen that the opportunities are bigger compared to the rural areas than to the bigger cities. For example, I've grown up most of my life in Athens, a lot of opportunities there. Then I went to Larissa to study, maybe some less opportunities there, and then I came here in New York, and I was astonished with how many people I met and how many opportunities were a result of the internship in New York. Okay, So we're a little bit past our time. Thank you very much, panelists. And we still have a lot of questions. We haven't addressed yet the questions for all, and hopefully we can address them later. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much.